We all feel that intuition of what do we desire and where are we being guided? And if we can tune into that, then we can start to adorn ourselves in these pieces and elements that relate to our greatness, our highness. We need us to be the beauty in the world, to transmit that through what we wear and all of the values that are ingrained in those clothes.
Welcome, dear ones. Thank you for being with us today. I had my rewilding time last week and it was beautiful. Being out in the wild, in the rain and not knowing the time. I had a few days with no phone on and no clock. And with the morning light starting at 5 a.m. and it not getting dark till 10 p.m. and the white stormy skies, I had this moment out of time where I had no idea what time it was and could deeply rest and listen to my body and the birds and experience a real respite from our culture. I then went to visit the land where we are hosting our gathering this September, and some beautiful seeds are being planted there, which we will share with you when tickets are ready to go on sale. As we start to open up to events again, I want to tell you about the We Are Nature collaboration that we have with Noisily Festival. We will be hosting a panel with some of the wonderful speakers from this show at the festival in July. And before then, we felt it would be powerful to get together. On June the 12th, we're hosting a pilgrimage in Avebury, which will be guided by Charlotte Pulver and Chris Park. If you want to join us there in person, there are a small number of tickets available. And on the same day, we have an online event with a speaker panel of Charlotte and Chris with Bruce Parry, Ada Paris and Jimena Paracha, exploring this theme, We Are Nature. This will take place at 4:30 p.m. UK time, 11:30 Eastern New York time. And if you can't join us live, if you register, you will receive the video. For the links to the tickets, you can find those in our latest newsletter, or you can go to www.amisha.co.uk and click on events there and you'll find the link. We invite you to reconnect with this ancient wisdom, to celebrate the interconnection of all living beings and our planet's beauty and abundance, to recognize the importance of rerouting, grounding, and opening ourselves to the frequencies, intelligence, and infinite potential of life. So please do join us and share the word for this We Are Nature event, as we would love to share both the online space and the pilgrimage with you. For this week's show, my guest is Kerry Wilde, who is another of the incredible women who was part of the Style and Presence Summit. As an advocate for slow fashion and women's empowerment, Kerry's work meets at the intersect of spirituality, sustainability, and style. She believes that the future of fashion is in the art of adornment and soul style, dressing as means to create a new culture of authentic beauty and loving self-expression. Kerry was awarded a BA in Fashion and Textiles from Nottingham Trent in 2001 and went on to hold a successful career as a garment technologist within the fast fashion industry for over 20 years. In 2005, Kerry trained in Reiki and went on to acquire professional practice and teach yoga, feminine embodiment, and womb healing, deepening her own personal awakening journey and resolving past trauma. In 2018, she founded Art of Slow, an online platform to educate and bring awareness to the frequency of our clothing. Through this work, she is now a trained stylist with London College of Fashion, uniting self-development with style. Kerry has taught workshops, retreats, and led online courses to a global audience. As a future fashion pioneer, Kerry is an ambassador for the Empowerment Collective, an initiative set to eradicate slave labor within the fashion industry. And some of you will know the Empowerment Collective from our incredible episode with Nazreen Sheikh that we had earlier on in this season. In 2021, Kerry is celebrating her signature Art of Womxn program and looking forward to opening her own style academy. We explore the themes of embodied beauty, adornment, and style liberation in this conversation called The Power of Our Second Skin. I hope that you enjoy this episode and that it empowers you to live in style and presence. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. Kerry, I am delighted to be with you here now and welcome you to The Future is Beautiful. Thank you for sharing yourself with us here today.
Thank you so much, Amisha, for having me. I feel so honoured to be a part of this podcast, and I absolutely love your mission and your transmission through what you offer on this platform. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my absolute joy. And as you know, everything that you're doing is things that I've spent so much of my time thinking about and working on in my own life. And so it's a real joy. And my first question, which I am asking everyone now at the beginning of these conversations, is what does a beautiful future mean to you?
Oh, I love that question. I'm an Aquarius visionary, so I'm all about the future, and I see how we can make systems better. Like, that's a big part of my transmission and my blueprint, really. A beautiful future is about transforming lack into abundance, transforming the bare minimum into something even more exquisite, and the mundane into beauty, and sustainability into thrivability. You know, for me, it's about how can we expand into something of beauty. And so I feel for so long and through for so many reasons, we have been enslaved to a culture that demands us to live in lack and in poverty and in feeling broken and feeling that we are not enough. Actually, the culture thrives on us, be it staying in that space of low self-worth, low self-esteem. And you know, you can think about this in business as well. You can think about this every place. You know, I was telling you before about my children in education. I feel that this begins at a very early age, where we're all indoctrinated into an overculture that thrives on us not loving ourselves and not feeling in our center and not feeling worthy. A beautiful future for me is about walking the path of beauty and walking the path of self-love. People dressing in reverence and celebration of who they are and allowing their style to be symbolic and to be really honored and to be seen, to actually thrive through the art of dressing and the art of adorning.
Wonderful. And I want to come back to that. Of course, we will come back to that. I can say that even just making the extra effort to dress up a little bit for this call changed my energy completely. But there's something you said there about the path of beauty and self-love and worthiness. And it sounds really simple, but in my experience, it's not. It's really quite an art, and it's really quite a dedicated path to live a life of worth and love and beauty. Can you share a little bit about what that means to you, how that has unfolded in your own life?
Yeah, I'm a mixed race woman, and I was born into a white middle class family. My mum and dad didn't kind of have a relationship for the first year of my life. They then broke up. So I was raised by a white family as a woman of color. Within that family, my grandmother's story is that she had eating disorders. She had a pristine look about her. In the morning, she would, hair roller her hair. She would, 1950s housewife style, if you like, and, have this lipstick, have Olay on her, or oil, oil of Ulay on her dressing table, with all of her beautiful pieces of jewelry in beautiful boxes. And I just remember as a child being very aware of this way of making oneself up, and one of putting on these amazing, I like to call them masks now, but it is like actually adorning themselves with all of this makeup, which she looked incredible. Unfortunately, she had this secret undercurrent of an eating disorder that ate away at her. She actually died of cancer when I was 5. So the grandmother's story lives in all of us in terms of this insidious beauty myth that we have been enforced into as women, and witnessing this woman take what you would deem as good care of herself and, strive to this optimal standard of beauty through dieting, through taking diet pills. She did lots of laxatives and different things like that. And so that was in my DNA, if you like, and really starting to see her face and the sorrow in her face. And she didn't like her photograph being taken. She didn't like her self-image. In every photograph that I saw of my grandma, she was hiding her smile. She was not expressing herself as a woman of confidence or a woman that felt good about her image. So I guess part of my story begins there, really starting to see how we start to put the mask on. And even if we're not feeling good inside, we may look very pristine and beautiful from the outside, but she must have been feeling so scared and lonely and fragmented inside. That lineage, that I come from, it continues. The lineage that kind of continued through my mum and through my family members. So it stops here. It's taken me to go to the depths of myself in terms of my spiritual journey, to really begin to come home to the body that I'm in and decolonize some of the stories that are written within my DNA. So it's cellular, and it's also in the psyche, and it's also in the aura. If you think of the body, the mind, and the soul, it's all of those parts that I've had to really deepen and do the work on to be able to express who I am fully and with conviction, and not be scared of who I am.
That's really powerful. I feel like so many women and men, but we're talking about a culture that targets women in terms of the amount of advertising that is targeted towards women, in terms of the expectations around what it is to be a woman, and how easy it is to sort of quote unquote get it wrong in like the public's perception, somebody else's perception, how much judgment is freely thrown around. And so this path of actually, this like subtle difference around how we dress being something that's really connected to how we feel and who we are and what we want to express, and that actually takes us deeper into our truth, versus this dressing as like protection or hiding, masking, and kind of creating even more of a separation between our truth.
Yeah, I love what you said there. I think it's the illusionary selves that want to present through dress, being on the path of, different spiritual lineages. What I found was this non-attachment, that actually, can I let go and surrender and dissolve more of these parts that I'm playing into that are actually parts of a persona that I've adopted and taken on as mine. So part of that deepening is, how can I let go of these parts that I'm performative in that are not serving the greater destiny path of who I am anymore? And that is the practice, because, that has been a big part of my practice, is letting go of these masks of illusion that actually were for everybody else and not for me. And who are everybody? It's that gaze. It's the gaze. It's the gaze, but it's also they, thinking about who are they? Who are we thinking about when we are dressing in the morning? Who are we thinking about when we are conforming to a certain societal standard? It's the they is within your psyche and within your body and within your cells, just like we've said. So the dismantling is, for me, it's a micro journey within. It's a self-development journey. And how can I shed and release and dissolve, rather than they do anything and change? Because the change, we know, starts with you. It's you and you. That journey of beginning, that journey of understanding that because I started to train in Reiki when I was 24, and I had this big, heavy career in corporate fast fashion, but I did the Reiki courses like side by side. And I think we have that allegiance there, because I think it was like I was still caught in the corporate world, but I was still very much in the holistic world. So it's like one foot in here, one foot in there. And going on that path to understand that I create my reality. I can heal myself. I was studying Louise Hay at like 24. People were like, what are you doing? Are you a hippie? I was like, no, I'm
not a hippie, Kerry. How dare you?
How very dare you? I'm just going to go and pray at this altar and bless my yoni. I'm not anything woo or anything different. People don't understand. But I started to just look at...
They didn't understand.
They didn't understand.
They are never satisfied.
Oh, it's so hard, isn't it? But I think taking ownership started in my mid-20s, because I'd projected for so long about them, they, and blamed the people around me. And so the journey of the self began around 23, 24. I had a bit of an awakening around that point.
And you say for so long, but if you were already at that point at 23, 24, because, it's not that difficult to get through your whole life to find yourself in your 70s, 80s, still dressing for they. And when we talk about dressing, just still being caught up in that. And for some people, they is very much like a sort of a figment of one's imagination. For other people, they is people, like it's husbands, it's brothers, it's bosses, being quite aggressive, like every single day, kind of chipping away. Yes. And that this can really be something that happens when women, people that identify as women, but also men, step into more of their fullness. Like, it does something to the field that can then create some kind of rift in like that sort of fabric. And then that can mean that the they volumes also get really turned up. And it feels like this has been something through history that when women have broken the mold, and done something that feels right and good for them, and it's ahead of its time in some way, that there's always so much that gets put on that, and so many labels, dangerous, kind of all kinds of different things. It sounds so simple what we're talking about, but it's really not. There's so much ancestral and cultural trauma here. And yet at the same time, when you really put that thing on that speaks to your soul, where like you're not dressing for those personalities or those personifications that you've externalized, but it's more archetypal, it's more like something that's really there within you that you're allowing to open. It's a full-on experience.
Yeah, it is. And thinking about the way in which we, stepping into your fullness, all of these slogans, be the queen, we see them all on social media where it sounds so easy when it's turned into a meme and you're like, yeah, and so a lot of spirituality has been tokenized, and it's almost like, just do this. Like, it's like the advert for Nike. It's like, just do it. Okay, I'll just be it. We know that journey it can be slow, it can be painful, it can be quiet, it can be quick, it can be shocking. It's almost an awakening and a commitment to self, that I am ready to reveal the greatness of who I am through the vehicle of clothing. But for me, my work is all inner to outer. So we know that the work first is inner, the work to deepen, to dissolve, to unite all of your parts, to come back to wholeness, to remember who you are, to see your reflection and that divine mirror reflected back on you, to receive love, to open to body acceptance, to even be here in this body is the work, and it's the daily practice. We're not ever going to get there. There's no goal to all of this work. It's a daily devotional practice of coming home and remembering. And we have to, because the insidious threads of this culture when it comes to beauty and style and fashion, especially for women, it's been penetrated through that culture of you have to look this way. We know that we have to then do a lot of work to release those codes, to remember, I still do this work. It's not fix it, we're done, we're going out the door. It's a daily practice, and it gets easier. Wow, I couldn't even look at my own reflection without being in that self-hatred, like feeling, why is that not right? Why have I got hips? Why have I got a big bottom? Oh my goodness. I was shocked and horrified by my reflection sometimes. That path I'm not on anymore. That gets so much easier with this work. And the work is embodiment. I'm an embodiment teacher. First and foremost, that is what I am. I came into this world as that. I didn't have an easy childhood. There was lots of trauma, and I had to create magic in my work, in my childhood. And what that looked like was dancing, which is being in my body, and moving and creating and dressing up. And so in 3, 4, I was dancing on stage age 3. I started a dance class, so I would go to dancing 4 times a week. But outside of that class, it was like I would be in my imaginary world, in inverted commas, but really I was going into different realms. I was becoming different people. I was remembering who I was at that very early age. So, and I could see, different energies. I was moving things around my room. There was a lot of psychic stuff that was happening for me as well around that time. The dressing became this expression. When things were going a bit crazy in my house, the dressing became this vehicle of like beauty and majesty and grace. And I would dance around my house and like do another performance for my family, which is very performative. But it gave me that pathway to find solace in a way, and find safety and find beauty in my world. And that teaching has continued. So anybody that has, knows me knows that dressing up, I've always had a dressing up box. I've dressed people up. I've styled people during my life. At a party, I'm there. I come with clothes. And so styling became this my creative expression. So yeah, embodiment is what we're talking about here. It's not just about pulling a dress out of the closet and saying, I'm good enough to wear this thing and standing in it. What do you feel when you are wearing that? Do you feel worthy to wear this color? What is happening in the body? So somatically, I've done a lot of trauma resolution work where I've gone into the body and worked with a somatic experience practitioner, where it's about how does it feel? It's about the felt sense. It's tracking. It's monitoring the information that is happening when you're just standing and looking at your own reflection. Style resolution is about dismantling any blocks to why you're not able to wear what you really want to wear, what you desire, what your heart desires, and what I call them like your muse selves desire, because we all have higher selves. We all get guided and we feel that intuition, whether it's in our body or whether we have it more in a psychic capacity. But we all tune into that intuition. I'm leading on to your book, Amisha, your beautiful book. But we all feel that intuition of what do we desire and where are we being guided? And if we can tune into that, then we can start to adorn ourselves in these pieces and elements that relate to our greatness, our highness. When somebody dresses in that way, it is beauty in motion. It's so powerful because you can feel the resonance and the coherence between the soul that they are and the pieces that they are wearing, and how much alignment is coming forth into the room, into Tesco's, into the school run. You feel that alignment, and we need modern day people, the spiritual people on a mountain downloading. We need us to be the beauty in the world, to transmit that through what we wear and all of the values that are ingrained in those clothes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love how you express that if we are showing up in our lives, like really from the inside out, with like that care of detail, and that we're doing that as a practice, that changes the way that we meet the world, and it changes the way that the world meets us, and it changes what's possible in the world.
Yeah, and it's a magnetism. I studied Kundalini Yoga for many years and had a very intensive practice. And that was my medicine for that time. It's not my medicine anymore.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. So not my medicine, but it took me to the ethers, and it did bring a lot to me. So I honor that path that I was on at that point. Being in that world of Kundalini and that intensity of the structure and the discipline, but also understanding that we are royal in the world. Like it gave me that a lot of codes around sovereignty, and understanding that to dress it as kings and queens is so important. And so a lot of the practice within that was about wearing the turban, wearing white. I don't adhere to those dress codes anymore, but, definitely gave me that hierarchical, or kind of, maybe that's the wrong word actually, because I don't particularly believe in that kind of structure, but it gave me an elevated standpoint on how I wanted to present myself. The art of adornment was the word that rang to me. You are the arts, that feeling of, wow, we are a work of art. We are a blueprint. We're so unique. Every soul that is here has their own expressions to bring, their own gifts. We can express that through the art of adorning. And that is so individual. And yet it's when we are dressing from that standpoint of uniqueness, we are actually attracting we're attracting everybody else. So we're magnetizing these people in, or souls into, as part of the greater tapestry of life. We are uniting everybody through adorning ourselves as our soul wants to speak. So yeah, that, the path of the Kundalini Yoga did bring me into direct contact with adorning. I feel that, there's such a lack of education around how to dress, how to, I really believe that children should be taught how to bring together a wardrobe of pieces that are going to be functional, that are going to perform what they need in a wardrobe, actually from a sustainability standpoint, the longevity, what quality means. Having been a garment technologist for so many years, quality is so important around this conversation of fast fashion and slow fashion and sustainability. But I feel like education really needs to happen at such an early age so that we can start to bring up generations that understand clothing, but also understand style, who they want to be, without the drip feed of the magazine culture just telling you when you start to buy, your magazines aged whatever, 10, 11, and you're like,
it's much younger now.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, probably. I was into Just 17 and what was that? What else? Twinkle. I sound very old, but yeah.
Just 17. It was very grown up. We all remember Position of the Week when we were like 9 or 10.
And the do's and don'ts, we were brought up and raised with that. Do wear stripes if you're this shape, don't wear them, and never wear blue and green together. All of these insidious things that I took in, because we read them week on week, and somebody's telling you in a magazine, and you're at the age where you're believing everything someone is saying. And, that is the work that I find with clients. They're like, oh, I can do that. It's a permission slip to behave in a way that hasn't been prescribed. It's like, wow, how can I could put this and this together. It's like, yeah, if that feels resonant, let's try it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I was in the Kundalini Yoga world, I was resistant to the uniform, right? Because that rebellious side, and like, I'm not doing that. And then I remember talking to one of my teachers about it and about the turban, and I remember him saying, the thing is, you'll find yourself wanting to. And then I realized at a certain point that because that type of yoga technology is all about bringing the energy up to the crown, you do feel better if you've got a turban on your head. There's a containment, and it shifts the vibrationary field of the experience, as does the difference of wearing white and not wearing white, as is the difference of being in a room full of people all wearing white.
Yes.
And if you go into that room wearing black or purple, you feel it, like it's a whole vibratory field. And then
definitely.
and that definitely also for me was like, okay, there's something here. In the same way that like a uniform can make you feel awful, the uniforms that you have to wear, say if you work at Tesco, they're not designed to make you feel your fullest self. Like they're designed to kind of make you sort of blend into the system in a certain kind of way. And I find all of that really interesting. And this thing around children, I've been blessed to spend quite a lot of the last 2 lockdowns. I've been near my nieces who are 3 and 5. A lot of people haven't put makeup on or dressed in their nice clothes during lockdowns. And, there's that sort of little bit of just sort of putting a bit of something together for a Zoom. And what's been amazing is then having these girls show up and be like, can you wear a dress? Like, where's your dress? Like, I want you to wear something kind of queenly, and like, I want a crown. And like, there's some tussle about whether I get to be a princess or a queen. I'm definitely in my queen archetype at this point. Past the maiden. That kind of play, that reminder that the dressing isn't for something. And I think as adults, we can get so caught up in these stories of like, oh yeah, oh, I had an excuse to dress up. I had a reason to put that on. You know, it was for someone else. It was for something external. It's because I had a date or because I was going to this thing. I feel like it's really interesting as a daily practice, like when you're just doing it for yourself, where it doesn't really matter where you're going or what you're doing. Part of my way around it, because it was winter and I'm not a winter being. hail from a different hemisphere. And so then I found actually these really lovely, like bright colored organic cotton jogging bottoms. and they were pink and they were teal. And it just meant that even in my like dressing casual, cozy, I was able to bring something else to it that just sort of made it feel more vibrant and alive and less like I was just kind of in my pajamas because, you know, in lockdown. And it makes such a difference.
Oh, it does. Clothing is vibrational, holds a frequency. It's a vibrational field that it creates. So during those deep meditations that I was doing, I realized that actually within the clothing, within the color, within the fabric, and Carrie Summers, the founder of Fashion Revolution, said that there's a silent Me Too interwoven in every garment that we wear. When I heard that, I was like, wow, yeah, because I'd already been feeling it from this energetic perspective as a Reiki practitioner, as a womb healer, as a feminine embodiment teacher. I was feeling clothing and thinking, we're doing all this high grade practice and somebody's wearing a Primark white dress, but they're practicing Kundalini Yoga. So this field that we're talking about, this, you know, the 10 bodies, the radiance connection to the radiant body, and actually we're projecting our radiance out, it's actually got to penetrate through this silent Me Too that we're wearing. So where's the cohesion where's the alignment with that? So for me, it was like, wow, I cannot wear this anymore. I cannot sit in these practices and feel aligned with who I am, because actually there is 40 million slaves in the world, and slave labor within the fashion industry is rife. I've seen slave labor firsthand. I've walked into factories and seen boys being pushed out of the factory, back end of the factory door. I've seen children, you know, that are around frames where sequins are being put on. And, you know, when I walk out of that house, I know that they're going to be helping their mothers do it. And so I've seen it and I've felt it, and I've looked in the eyes of factory workers in India, in Bangladesh, in China, and felt, you know, when we talk about felt sense and we talk about that intuition, you just have a sense that something isn't right. Somebody's not feeling good or empowered in that factory, in that place. Sitting in those meditations and feeling this disconnect with, you know, everybody in this room is potentially buying, some people might be buying ethical and sustainable, but a big portion of those women were not educated on sustainability and were probably buying fast fashion. They just needed a white dress, they needed a white turban, but who was making those clothes? That was the lead on, I guess, from that inquiry. It was like, if we're talking about all of this adorning and majesty and royalty and sovereignty, we can't then bypass the fact that within every garment there is a lack of traceability. There is a real call to action off our mats, off our sheepskins. Somebody needs to be shouting, because there's people in the world without voices that are enslaved to the fast fashion culture, and we are all enslaved to the fast fashion culture because we've created it. Style, you know, soul style is what I teach and what I live and breathe. But underneath that mission is to be a voice for the women and the men that are trapped into and enslaved into the fashion world and cannot speak up or speak out. So I'm actually ambassador for empowermentcollective.org. It's set up by a woman called Nazreen Sheikh.
I was just about to interject and just say to all of our listeners, we've had her on the podcast.
Oh,
She's incredible. And
wow.
she shares her story, and she shares about hating those clothes that she had to make, like hating them. That vibration of that pain and that hate, and you can hear her talk about it firsthand on the podcast. And also just want to direct our listeners that are interested in this as well to listen to Safia Mini as well on this podcast, who talks a lot about this, just as some extra references.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Amisha. Yeah, speaking to Nazreen is like a visceral experience.
She is an absolute queen.
Oh, she really is. She's feminine empowerment embodied. I mean, she's just, if anyone talks to me about feminine leadership, I say, follow Nazreen and listen to her story. And so when me and Nazreen first spoke, we were like polar opposites of the supply chain, if you like. I like to call it value chain now, but she was in the slave labor position. I was in the ethical auditing garment technologist position, which meant that I was visiting these factories and I wasn't getting to her. So I was visiting the factory that looked really slick, that had everything flowing. I was ticking the boxes, but I was feeling there was something amiss. And sometimes I was challenging the factory owners and being taken to the actual village where they were actually making some of the garments. And that's where I saw these elements of slave labor. But I wasn't going to these places that were hidden. And that's what Nazreen talks about. You know, I was in that career for 20 years, and that's why I do what I do, because I've seen firsthand the devastation of fast fashion. I've seen firsthand this exploitation of workers, and I felt the vibration of that. And it actually sent me into a huge awakening. Spiritually, mentally, I had a breakdown, basically, which no one likes to admit. But for me, that was the catalyst to study yoga, the catalyst to get off the wheel of this corporate capitalist dream, in inverted commas, and really pull my energy back in, because I could see what we were doing. I worked for really big conglomerates, and what we were doing was absolutely stripping away and taking and raping from a culture and not giving back. We were $1 billion business, and we built a school for 30 children in Bangladesh, and we were all supposed to stand around applauding, and I felt sick. So, you know,
aren't we so good? We're being philanthropic, and it's like,
it's so shocking. So, yeah, Nazreen's story really spoke to me, because as she was looking at every garment, hating the garment, feeling so unsafe and unclean and not, not absolutely disempowered.
And starving.
Starving. And, with one, how many children in a room? I think it's 15 children in a room, and the sewing machines in the same room. They slept, piles of clothes stacked, and the smell of the chemicals. She was weeing in one corner. It was hot, shocking. And so I was at the other end of the spectrum, visiting these factories, leaving my son at home, who was 2 at the time, feeling completely severed from the feminine. So feeling like I could only operate from my mind, logically, rationally. Everything was a succession point. The KPIs, the appraisals, the constant pressure. I had one job, I had a laptop, a BlackBerry, and a mobile. I had my China mobile that would go off at 3 a.m. and I would answer emails while I was going for a wee in the middle of the night. The pressure was intense in that industry. So I was, again, almost like being thrown out of that industry because my health was being compromised. So I ended up having a labyrinthitis, which was an inner ear disorder, where my whole balance, so your ears have the ear canal, which looks like a labyrinth, and it's all made up of the water, and the balance helps you to walk. And so when you get this infection, which is like a viral infection, actually, you can't walk anymore. So it was like I used to have dizzy spells. I was sick at work, and I had to take 6 months out to get to find myself. And the guilt, the shame of not being able to cope in that system was intense. And then at the same time, I was dismantling, what am I doing? What is my role here? Why am I doing this awful job? And so then I found yoga. I mean, you know, that was 2011. And then I trained in yoga in 2012. So it was a big awakening. And I said to myself at that point, I want to be the voice for these women and men trapped in this system. You know, it took me a long time to really bring all of this work together, but that is the foundation of my work, is that I want people to understand how clothing is made and how the value that is in clothing. Because I think this disposable fashion that we wear, that people buy, actually, we don't understand what the compromise is and what the lack of integrity looks like when we don't really understand how the fashion industry works. And many people haven't done sewing lessons as a young adult anymore. I did because I was interested in it. But many people, you know, home ed maybe didn't encompass, you know, what clothing looks like, how garments are made, and what that supply chain looks like. So people are becoming much more aware, but I wonder if I'm in that bubble of people that are aware. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Amisha? Do you think we're in the microcosm of we understand sustainability, or do you think that there is a growing consumer awareness?
There's definitely a growing consumer awareness, and there's definitely a growing awareness from the fashion brands. When I think back to when I started with the Ethical Fashion Forum, like 2008, we did like the Refashion Awards and Spotlight on Sourcing. And I mean, the brands didn't have a clue that weren't sustainable brands. It was like, okay, what's happening? Like, tell us, you know? And so, of course, there's been huge leaps. At the same time, I'm not sure how much difference it's made. And I don't know, because I don't have the facts and the figures. But what I sort of understand is that, I mean, these situations with the pandemic have been horrendous. And at the same time, it's kind of also the separation that we've all been feeling in the West has triggered more buying of stuff, like mindless buying of stuff. And then we know what's happening with the returns, the online shopping returns, just getting burnt or never finding their way to anyone. Yeah, and the provisions for those people working in garment factories and the support that they've had is nothing through this pandemic. And so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I feel like on some level, it's become part of a wider vocabulary and understanding that, yeah, this is happening. Yeah, this is still happening. And then at the same time, I'm not sure how different things are. It's so slow.
Yeah. And I know the rewear market has definitely increased. You know, vintage, secondhand pieces with stories. I see that through clients that they want that now. They want to have that sentimentality attached to them and hold meaning. I think rewear is definitely growing phenomenally. And I know that there's lots of, you know, ways that the brands are moving the needle, just not fast enough, not quickly enough. For me, I definitely try and bring this conversation and the narrative to you, like to the consumer, to the citizen, to the one person that is in front of me at a time.
And to their soul.
To their soul, yeah. And so I feel like it's a soul conversation. It starts with spirit. It starts with the connection. You know, when I said about this severance from the feminine, we've had mass severance from our connection to the earth. You know, when I was born, I wasn't kind of, I wasn't praying at the earth. And, you know, I know that we've done similar work, Amisha, where the feminine and the Shakti and the energy of the earth is so vital to our life force. It's vital to how we bring up our children. It's vital to how we live in this world, but we've had to do that work to reconnect ourselves to finding that connection, to remembering that connection, which is ancient wisdom and ancient codes that you know we've opened up to. But that severance of the feminine, I feel, is like the closing of the loop. You know, it's like, how can we close the loop on ourselves first? That's what I had to do before I could be a responsible, mature human and actually caretake for others. I had to caretake for myself first. I had to close the loop on circularity within me. So all of the fragments, and I talk about like the frayed ends of myself that were burnt and severed by whatever, had to really come into wholeness and balance, and so that I could then be like the full moon shining on other people and be that radiance that could deliver these kind of messages around sustainability, some, you know, the vital piece around slave labor, and actually be the full moon or the sun, that presence. Because until we're holding ourselves to accountability and we're holding ourselves in that real alignment, that real full embodiment of our greatness, then we can't move to that next step of activism. I don't know, I've read your story, and I feel that, you know, we can only do so much, that we burn out in whatever capacity without the feminine, without that connection to the earth.
I would add that there's spirals kind of within it. So we can't get to this sort of perfect wholeness, like, and we have to also keep showing up for what's happening. When I talk about how slow it is, you know, like how slow this change has been, and how there's part of me that's like, you hear, say, Nazrine's story, and you're like, how can we hear these stories and as a global community not like enact laws that make this impossible? Like, how can we keep doing this? And I feel like part of the maturation as an activist is that you have to accept how slow this is, and that it will break your heart again and again and again and again, and that you can work on things 10 years ago and then find it's just still happening. And I feel that relationship with the feminine that you speak of, that relationship with really knowing who we are, that's what resources us to being able to keep awake and present and contributing our part. And so it can almost seem like a little bit frivolous, like, you know, and I'm sure maybe you've gone through this journey with yourself of like, how can I be talking about putting on a beautiful dress and adorning when all this is happening in the world? And it's like, well, we have to be doing both. Like, we have to be stepping more fully and deeply into the magnificence of our soul and into everything that we're capable of, into all of those seeds that live inside of us. And at the same time, it is that will help us to keep showing up and keep enacting the changes, however slow they are, or be prepared for when there's a moment that a bigger change can happen and we can put more pressure somewhere or show up more and make something happen. And that comes from that self-knowledge, because otherwise there's no other way than burnout. And it's not pretty when that happens. And it can also make you kind of resent that you gave to this thing. And this is a time of deep interconnectedness and deep inequality. We have to live within that complexity and find our way of being like fully here in the life that we're living in, whichever part of the world that we're in, and enjoying, you know, living in joy through the opportunities that we have, and at the same time sharing that energy with what we can do to uplift our world and our relationship with this planet.
Yes. The spiral, totally. That should be a business model, the spiral. This response.
I would like to consult that into conglomerate.
How can this work? Where's the profit in this? But it's actually receptivity, isn't it? And you're listening, and the solutions are based on what you're feeling, what's being presented in that present moment, in the now. And that is the creative, solution-based way of working, rather than the goal-oriented, masculine way of working in business. I feel like we are coming into that point of feminine leadership where we have to look at these models and understand, are they beneficial as a whole to everybody in that system? And that is the way of equality. And I feel like women now are rising to this occasion and being met by the most amazing men as well on this path of beauty. And it is this path of authentic beauty. Art, the art of somebody will change the world, and art unifies us, and art is interdependent. It's not codependent on anything else other than its own unique blueprint and standpoint for the values that it holds. And then that ripples out into the collective, and that connects. Yeah, for me, like, some of the big influences have been art, in this journey. I started as a sculptress, like when I was at doing my foundation course. And for me, I was looking at people like Louise Bourgeois. I was looking at the photography of Cindy Sherman and Frida Kahlo, and those really pivotal, those women that really shifted this needle on beauty and created these. Well, Louise Bourgeois was doing all of this incredible, not conceptual art, but art where she was like installation pieces that were sculptural, but she was telling a story, and she would move between some of the pieces or get different dancers to come in and express. When I saw some of the work, it was grotesque. So it was this ugly form of beauty, but actually understanding that beyond the pretty, pleasing beauty, there's a story, there's a message, there's a transmission where you're actually unlocking some of the pieces that are not talked about, some of the taboos. Like, some of her work was about sexual abuse, and so it was like, wow, somebody can really bring that to the light through how somebody's moving and through sculpture. And then Cindy Sherman, the way that she worked with identity and changed the face of, it was self-portraiture, so it was always her behind the camera and in front of the camera. And so it was all about dissecting this modern day narrative of beauty and how actually beyond the eyes it was ugly beauty again. It was kind of like this distorted, I think of like her latex mask sort of half hanging down the face. And I think sometimes you could read into some of the imagery. It was just very powerful that, these women and sometimes men, so she did lots of cross-dressing as well to explore identity and how dress and how self-image really can translate and project into and create a frequency. You could just feel the story in some of her photos. So I feel like the influence of that in my work is actually, how do we create you, like the authentic you, to come to step forth through your image, through the way you look, but actually it to come from this deep place of harnessing your power, harnessing your soul gifts and your soul light, and allowing that to dress and to kind of become who you are.
Hello. We're taking a short pause from the conversation. On behalf of our team and our community, thank you for being here and co-creating The Future is Beautiful. Much dedication, love, and time goes into the production of this show. We believe in being advertising free in a world that's always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And so we make this show with you and for you, thanks to your support. There are 3 ways you can be more involved, so we can share the vision, wisdom, and creativity here as we explore what it means to be a human in this time. You can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends, posting episodes on social media, and doing iTunes reviews. You can support as a patron by making a monthly or one-off donation of your choice. And with this, you join the Global Patrons group and monthly video calls where we share connection and insight. You get to know the other amazing patrons from around the world, their stories and their work, and you offer direct support to me and the team, as well as being brought into the behind the scenes of creating something like this. It sounds like a lot, but it's as much or as little as you want to get involved in. You can become a member of Presence, our membership collective of care and practice, where we explore how to embody the themes of the podcast with workshops, calls, special events, tree whispers, and powerful tools, practices, and rituals that you can bring into your life. This is open to absolutely everybody as we create an inclusive and diverse space that celebrates well-being as a human right, where we explore together what it means to be creative, courageous, and connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. This is about embodying sacred activism. We love meeting patrons and Presence members and how being part in this way weaves our lives together as well as making this show possible. If anything from this conversation has moved or inspired you, please get more involved. All information can be found at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. This show really can't go on without your patronage and Presence membership, so please do make it happen. And now, back to the conversation.
Before the podcast, we were talking about the education system and how in this stripping away of what we can call the feminine, but we can call it so many things, that understanding of us as a work of art and understanding our relationship with art, and that being part of our power and part of our integrity with our soul, because that's stripped out so young, because it's not part of the economic system. It's not something that contributes to our economy, apart from a few people that get through that and get, but then even still, it's in a space where it's all dependent on who will pay for it. And so I love that is part of the reclaiming.
Yeah, and I'm looking at people now like Alok V. Menon and the way that I'm learning my pronouns, and the way they express themselves as a work of living art, as a transmission that is gender non-binary. It's moving away from the conditioning that we're born into, that you must wear pink and you must do, and we're actually moving beyond that. And for me, I'm really interested in their work because what it is this pure expression of beauty, this authentic transmission of beauty, and beyond gender. The story of being born into a family that were white-bodied family, and I'm a half Jamaican, woman of color, Black woman living in this household. I've had to do this work of deconditioning the binary of what a white woman, how that feels in her body. So, being raised by a white woman has definitely, I've had to really find the fragility in myself that exists in my DNA to really honor the African and Jamaican life force in me that wants to be the wild woman that really wanted to express and play with that and find that celebration of my ancestral codes away from the conditioning that I had growing up as a child. And so finding my identity, or because I think of identity as attachment sometimes, so that's why I'm always a bit like, shall I use that word? Identity, is it a falsity? Like I always think of it, is it an illusion? Actually, just being who you are is like, that's where I want to get to. It's like just being and expressing is the liberation, is the soul style, because you're in that natural harmonic place of resonance with who you are, and then therefore the wares that you want to adorn yourself with.
Something that tickled me slightly when you were talking, as you were talking about pronouns, and you were talking about a lot and they, and we were talking at the beginning about they, what would they say? What do they think? You know, that they would judge. And I love that the pronoun they has been reclaimed by those that are trans, non-binary, gender fluid. And actually, if we're asking what would they think, they would be like, you yes! Go. Yes. Just be you do you. Wow. And so it's actually a lovely little twist that I'm going to play with. If that voice, I mean, I don't get that voice so much anymore, but if that voice ever comes up, or I invite any of our friends listening, if they have that kind of sense of like, oh, I couldn't possibly wear this, what would they think? Just to change who that they is. Into the most expressive people that we have, that are the most free, that are breaking through all these different conventions.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That one on, writing that down. And the celebration in that, and the liberation in that, and the relief. We talked a little bit about the somatic experience and the nervous system states, you know, understanding how we feel when we are wearing certain clothing, and maybe when we're looking at ourselves in a pair of jeans, you know, the they voice, or the self critic that might arise that's actually not celebratory. It's finding that optimal, safe, pendulating nervous system that is feeling healthy and, you know, ready to, if somebody, you know, stands in our space, ready to say, no, move back, or, you know, that in that healthy state of your nervous system. It's about feeling that even if you wore something that feels daring to you, that you are able to still be in your power when you're wearing something that is daring. So understanding the states of the nervous system for me has been a huge learning and intelligence that feeds into my work now, because somatically we have been conditioned to feel like we're a threat if we wear the color red. You know, for women, maybe if we wear something low cut and we have our décolleté on show, that feels daring to some women, maybe not to others. So it's really understanding on the spectrum where you are and how you're feeling in terms of hiding or revealing, you know, being more visible or concealing yourself. And so that spectrum can look like, you know, just wanting to wear really big clothes and hide the body of the form, the shape of the goddess underneath all of that. Or it could look like, you know, wanting to provoke, wearing, you know, colors that provoke and to get, you know, to
deflect.
To kind of like, to show you more of yourself. So it's understanding why you wear what you wear by going on the self-exploration and understanding how you feel in what you wear and what the nervous system is telling you, what the triggers are, what that feels like, what that tastes like, what's the quality of that experience. Many of us haven't consciously, I don't want to say dissected it, but, you know, gone into that detail of that work, because our wardrobe holds so many stories and so much of the wounding that we've been talking about, the severance. It holds so much of that within the collection of clothing that we've gathered today now. So, you know, a reflection that would be maybe helpful for the listeners would be to stand in front of your wardrobe of clothes and begin to feel what feels resonant now, because we find that 80% of the clothing that we own may not feel so relevant for who we've become. And especially when we start to do that inner work, we start to become these, I don't want to say superhumans, but, the soul light is coming.
We can be superhumans, Kerry.
Okay. Everyone needs a cape.
I did actually just get a cape last week. It's a black cape. My niece was straight away had it. It was like
flying off.
Yeah. It's sort of like a cloak.
I love.
Yeah. I love what you're sharing there, because there's so much that we might have in our wardrobes that maybe we paid a lot of money for it at the time, or maybe we wore it a lot at the time, that we loved it. But then actually the truth is like, if you put it on now, it doesn't feel right. And so having the courage to let go and make space. I speak as a clothes hoarder, and part of my story is like, well, I spent a lot of money on clothes in my 20s. So, I better keep them, because I didn't put that into like a savings account. And actually, I'm really feeling like I could just liberate those things, because I'm not going to wear them again now. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not ready. No, I'm ready. And, it's a little game that we play with ourselves. How do you get people to let go?
Yeah. So what you've just spoken to there is attachment. So the art of letting go, the art of releasing these aspects of self. Sometimes, like we spoke about at the beginning, these identities that we play into, I see the pieces of clothing that hold their own field of that potential. And when that field of potential doesn't actually feel resonant anymore, and it's not congruent to who we've become, when we put that piece on, we can feel that misalignment, and we feel maybe a bit awkward in it, or it doesn't fit right. And that might not be because it doesn't fit our body shape, because our body shape is always shape shifting. We are never one body shape. We're never one size. I've got multiple sizes in my collection. Just as a side note, that is all okay to have that and to admit that. And, because we're taught that we must be one, conform to one size, and it's not true.
Yeah. And you'll want different things at different times of the month. And,
yes,
that's
completely.
just how we are.
Yeah, completely. The beginning of that journey is understanding who you've become. Who am I now? And I went through a sacred marriage. So I married myself in 2018 in ceremony with women present. And that was a part of bringing all of my aspects home. So it was a real surrender to my own heart as my love, as my beloved, and bringing all of these parts of me that had been fragmented back home to me. The sacred marriage then is this sort of, when we're thinking of all of these old clothes that maybe we're not feeling, we're not wearing anymore, and we start to unite these parts of ourselves together, and they might be energetic, but they might also be parts of you that you've left behind. Like, I've got clients that love painting. They're like, I'm going to take that up again, because that brings me home to who I am. And so I've had clients that just suddenly find that they are doing things that they haven't done for a very long time to come back to remember who they are. So then when we start to feel more like us, and it's like, oh, and it's not so rigid, and I'm moving in my seat while I'm talking now.
I'm moving with you.
It's all a bit juicy and a bit like, oh, hi. We can start to then feel like, wow, am I connected to this piece? Is this really who I am? And I think the art of letting go is knowing that, and this is the circularity, isn't it? This is the way of rewear, reuse, and renew. Like it's actually coming home to that cycle of the clothing sitting on the hanger, gathering dust for nobody to see and nobody to wear, nobody to witness, and nobody to enjoy, is a travesty, isn't it? It's almost like we are waiting. We're ladies in waiting for the perfect weather, waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting for our lives to begin. Now our life is here. We're ready. We want to enjoy and wear something that's going to switch us up, turn us on, ignite the world in that frequency. And if those pieces in that collection are not going to do that for you first, and then allow that light to ripple out, then it's about getting super honest, even if they're expensive. I have clients that have got rid of serious amounts. I mean, this woman had 13 bin bags full that were coming off. And she said, they're all my old masks. So when I talk on social media a lot about the mask, it's this illusionary identity that we've claimed as, oh, I'm going to have a bit of this. We've done a lot of magpie shopping along the way. And maybe it's about status. Maybe it's about beautiful brands, beautiful products, but we have these pieces that are still not resonant with who we are. So it's about being super honest. That is really the key. It's this honesty with who we are now. And those pieces can go to so many beautiful homes. So she sent loads of pieces to Vestiaire, which is a luxury resale shopping platform. And then you've got the likes of eBay and lots of other places as well to resell. But also gifting is a really beautiful art form, because I think we talked about it when you did that panel conversation. But
Style and presence.
Style and presence, yeah. We talked about, the stories that are written within these pieces, and imagine gifting that to another. It's that generational passing down, but we can do that within our communities. A good friend, Joss Whipple, I don't think you know her, she set up Mend Assembly, and that I spoke to her yesterday. She was saying we're going to have a permanent swapping rail. So that swapping becomes the normality, because we all own so many pieces that we can begin to gift each other.
Totally. And it's so nice when you share something with a friend and you see them enjoying it. It can be slightly triggering, because then there's like a sort of thing from our conditioning that makes you go, wait, I want it back. It's fine. But that's it's a really good practice to be like, and now you enjoy it. And I'm enjoying you enjoying it. And also, I do believe in saving a few things, because there are things that my mother has given me, and I feel like, having not had lots of family in this country and not had family beyond my parents here because they immigrated here, that having some things that are passed down has been really special for me. And my mum actually kept a lot of my children's clothes, and then we gave them to my nieces, which that's been really gorgeous to watch. But I feel like if we can have better modes of community, maybe we can share them now, and then they can come back at those times as well, so that they're not just sat in boxes or in attics for 20, 30 years in between.
Yeah, and the rituals that we can create around our dress is something that I teach also, because coming from a garment technology career, it was all about care. So I used to do all the care labels. I would make sure the test reports, everything was performing to the optimal standard. And so I really understood how we need to be caring for product. If you kind of bring that into a spiritual perspective, then, and also an ancestral perspective on how we treat our garments. And just like when we infuse crystals with an intention on a new moon, or we kind of write a list in our journal, maybe a list of intentions, it's how do we bring those words or that message into clothing? Our clothing is something that we wear like a second skin every day. And yet it's kind of treated like, bring it in the wash, stick it out, iron it, shove it. It's almost treated like a commodity. What about bringing it into this real ritualistic way of caring and adorning for these pieces, this beautiful piece? And I think when we bring the relationship closer and closer to meaning of clothing and to value of clothing, then we will start to, they won't just be sitting there rotting in our wardrobe. We will be working with them. And so part of our spiritual practice of, yoga on the mat, we will have clothing there. I did a beautiful adornment ceremony at a festival, actually, and we had women in the middle with their favorite pieces of clothes, and I helped them to dress, and then they were adorning themselves, and we were, bringing lots of flowers and different methods of adornment, and they were then dancing to their favorite music. And it was this beautiful witnessing of somebody enjoying their clothes. And, before that, we'd had a big talk about the fashion industry and the kind of the problems. And this felt like the solution of coming home to well-being and clothing together in alignment. And so the inner is in alignment with the outer. So, yeah, that's a big part of it too, because the ritual of dressing, we've lost it, haven't we, along the way?
Yeah, we have. The mention of inner and outer brings us to our call to action. I would love for you to share what it is that you would like our friends listening to take into their lives from this conversation. And you're allowed an inner and an outer call to action.
Oh, thank you. A massive call to action for me that is inner is a shift in perception around clothing. So I would really encourage anybody that's listening that maybe some of these topics are new, or they haven't kind of done any of the education around sustainable fashion. I would direct them towards Fashion Revolution to start with, and really start to dismantle this piece around fast fashion that we are blind to. And so I'd really ask them to open their eyes and start to see what is happening out there in the world, and why we are all being called to digest some of this uncomfortable information about our industry that we are all a part of. So Fashion Revolution, also empowermentcollective.org is Nazreen's charity, and I'm an ambassador for that. And so we're having different kind of brainstorm meetings to see how we can get closer and closer to eradicating slave labor within the fast fashion industry. So please sign up to that and donate if you can. And the other call to action would be to join my program, Art of Womxn, which is about the inner to outer experience. It's really this marriage of all of our aspects coming into a full embodied transmission through style. So it's not just about clothing, and it's not just about self-development. It's kind of harnessing both of these worlds. It's a deeper dive, and it's an immersion into embodying who we are now and allowing the natural, authentic beauty to arise, to come into full expression through clothes. So that would be the inner. The outer.
That was all the inner.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm giving you loads. I'm giving you a list of homework. That's what I do. I give you I'm like, and more. The other thing I would do, as a call to action would be go in your wardrobe and play dress up. Get your clothes out on the bed, put them all out and play like you're a 5-year-old, and really start to play with color, play with your shapes and dance, and start to really feel that outer force coming through you, because we've forgotten the art of playing, of just knowing that these clothing, they're a celebration. It's not just about this mundane, I need to dress for work. It's about how can we get the joy and the celebration back into clothing.
Beautiful. And how would you like people to connect with you?
So you can find me on Instagram. I am _Kerry, KERRY, WILDE _ Wild, Kerry Wilde. And you can connect with me on there. You can also find me on my website, which is www.kerrywilde.com. Yeah, they're the two main places where I am. I also have a private soul style group on Facebook, so you're very welcome to join me there too.
And you're storming Clubhouse as well, right?
Oh my gosh. Do you know what? I've really gone off the boil the last couple of weeks.
Okay,
but yeah, I was really
you might be back.
obsessed. I might be back. I think I will be back, actually, because I think some of the topics aren't discussed on there. It would be quite good to have more conversation. But yeah, I was losing a lot of time on that. So I had to pull it back and have a few words with myself.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Kerry, it's been an absolute joy.
Oh, it's been such an honour and a pleasure. So lovely to connect with you. Thank you.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?